A man with powerful friends dies mysteriously inside a federal detention center. The cameras suddenly stop working, the guards just happen to fall asleep, and the one inmate who could expose names that reach into the highest levels of politics, finance, and entertainment ends up dead. For years, people have demanded answers, and for years, all they've gotten are excuses. But when Senator John Kennedy walked into a hearing with FBI Director Kash Patel, he didn't waste a single second. He asked the one question that millions of Americans still whisper every single day.
Mr. Director, worry not. We'll make sure your agency is adequately funded. This judge you arrested in Wisconsin, she was breaking federal law, wasn't she?
Yes, that's why we arrested her.
She was helping an illegal immigrant escape being taken into custody. Is that right?
Yes, and the field agents decided to open the case, work the case.
And as Americans, do we get to pick and choose which laws we want to follow?
We do not.
If you're a state court judge, do you get to decide you don't want to follow federal law?
No.
And if you violate federal law, you get arrested, don't you?
Yes, Senator.
That's called equal treatment under the law, isn't it?
Yes, Senator.
You remember Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, don't you?
Yes, Senator.
Mr. Strzok worked for the FBI. Mr. Strzok worked for the FBI. I think Ms. Page worked for Justice. The Inspector General found in its investigation that they hated President Trump and they really wanted Secretary Clinton to win. Is that true?
That's correct, sir.
And this would be the same same Ms. Page who sent an email to Mr. Strzok with whom she was having an affair. Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right? And Mr. Strzok with the FBI, senior official at the FBI replied, quote, no, he won't. We'll stop it. Did I read that correctly?
You did, Senator.
Okay. Now, Ms. Page got quit before she could get fired. Mr. Strzok was fired. And predictably, they filed a lawsuit because in Washington, it's easier to divorce your spouse than it is to fire a federal employee. Why did the FBI give Mr. Strzok $1.2 million and Ms. Page $800,000 to settle a lawsuit?
Senator, I do not know that settlement was reached in the prior administration.
Who made the decision?
The prior Department of Justice.
Who in the prior Department of Justice?
The settlement for that kind of case can only come from the Attorney General, which would be Attorney General Merrick Garland.
So the Attorney General decided to give Mr. Strzok $1.2 million and Ms. Page $800,000 after they were fired after actively interfering in the 2016 election. Is that right?
My understanding is that was a settlement they agreed to.
Pass me the sick bucket, please. The Hunter Biden laptop. In October of 2016, shortly before the election, the New York Post wrote a story that was widely covered talking about Mr. Hunter Biden's influence peddling scheme based on his laptop. A couple of weeks later, Secretary of State, soon-to-be Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, organized a group of 51 so-called intelligence experts. Had some real rock stars on the list. Jim Clapper, John Brennan, Michael Hayden, Leon Panetta, and they said, oh, no, the story in the New York Post is not true. It's based on Russian disinformation. You remember that?
I do, Senator, as the lead investigator for Russiagate for the House Intel Committee.
Yeah. The FBI had had the laptop for 10 months, hadn't they?
They did, Senator.
So the FBI knew right before the election that it wasn't Russian disinformation, didn't they?
And that was confirmed by the Inspector General's report.
Yeah. Who at the FBI refused to let the FBI tell the American people the truth.
I don't have that name in front of me, sir.
Well, would you look?
I will, sir.
I'd like to know. I'd like a name, not a division. I'd like the name. A person with a brain and a beating heart.
Yes, sir.
Did Jeffrey Epstein hang himself or did somebody kill him?
Senator, I believe he hung himself in a cell in the Metropolitan Detention Center.
Are you going to release all the information about that?
Senator, we are working through that right now with the Department of Justice.
When do you think you'll have it done, Kash?
I think in the near future, sir.
Like before I die?
Senator, we've been working on that, and we're doing it in a way that protects victims and also doesn't put out into the ether information that is irrelevant for production of the public, such as CSAM.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Reid.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director. As you're well aware, DOJ.
Did someone silence Jeffrey Epstein? Kennedy doesn't deal in polite language. His style is sharp, direct, and cutting. And this time he was face-to-face with the man who now oversees an FBI drowning in scandals. He pressed Patel with a question that refused to go away. The director gave the official line, that Epstein hanged himself. But what made the room shift was his quiet admission that not all the files have been released. For a country already skeptical of institutions, that was more than a gap. It was a confirmation that the truth is still locked away. Kennedy leaned in, his words laced with frustration. Will we get the truth before I die? That wasn't just his voice. That was the voice of every single person who has waited years for accountability. But Kennedy didn't stop there. He moved the spotlight onto something even deeper, whether justice in America still means what it claims to mean. He pointed to a recent case, a state judge caught breaking federal law by helping an illegal immigrant evade arrest. She was taken into custody, plain and simple. Equal treatment under the law. Kennedy hammered Patel with the obvious question. If ordinary people, even judges, face consequences instantly, why does that principle vanish when the names get bigger and the connections reach higher? And that's when Kennedy pivoted into the story of Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, two senior officials at the heart of the FBI's most controversial investigation. These weren't obscure names. They were powerful insiders, people who openly displayed bias in their private messages. Page once texted Strzok saying that the man she hated would never become president. Strzok, a senior official sworn to neutrality, replied with 3 damning words, "We'll stop it." Think about that. At the very moment the FBI was investigating a presidential candidate, a senior investigator admitted in writing that he would actively try to prevent an outcome he didn't want. For Kennedy, this wasn't politics. It was proof of rot inside the system. Now, Page quietly quit before she could be fired, while Strzok was shown the door. But here's the twist that enraged Kennedy and millions of taxpayers. Both of them walked away with settlements totaling over $2 million. Kennedy wanted to know who made that decision. Patel shifted, saying it was done by the prior Department of Justice. But when pressed for names, he offered nothing. No transparency. No accountability. Once again, the American people paid the bill, while those responsible for misconduct cashed out. Kennedy wasn't letting go. He steered the hearing into another scandal. The now infamous letter signed by 51 intelligence officials. Just weeks before a major election, those officials declared that a certain laptop story was Russian disinformation. The names on that letter were giants. Former CIA directors, former national intelligence heads, seasoned operatives. Their credibility alone was meant to kill the story. But the FBI had already had the laptop for nearly a year. They knew it wasn't Russian disinformation. They knew the files were real. And still, the letter went public, shaping the narrative at the exact moment voters were making up their minds that Kennedy's voice cut through the hearing room like a blade. I want a name. Not a division, not a department. A person with a brain and a beating heart. Patel didn't give it. He said he would look into it. For millions of Americans watching, it sounded like another dodge, another carefully rehearsed non-answer. And that silence was almost as loud as the scandals themselves. All of this, Kennedy argued, ties back to one haunting case. Epstein. Because if a man with such high-profile connections can die in custody under the perfect storm of coincidences, if the cameras fail, the logs vanish, and no one is ever truly held accountable, what does that say about the system itself? Epstein wasn't just a predator. He was a vault of secrets. And when that vault slammed shut, so did the chance of exposing who else was involved. Kennedy knows that millions believe Epstein was silenced, and every non-answer from Patel only fuels that suspicion. But here's what made this hearing different. Kennedy wasn't only chasing one scandal. He was exposing the thread that ties them all together: two-tier justice. Ordinary Americans get arrested, fired, punished without hesitation. Elites, insiders, and those connected to the halls of power get settlements, silence, and protection. When Kennedy compared the arrest of a state judge to the payouts for FBI officials and the cover-up of a laptop, he wasn't just pointing at hypocrisy. He was pointing at a system designed to protect itself at the expense of the people it claims to serve. And if you step back, you see the pattern clearly. First, a mysterious death in federal custody with every safeguard inexplicably failing. Then, top FBI officials exposed for bias but rewarded with taxpayer millions. Next, intelligence leaders shaping public perception with a letter they knew was false. Finally, a director dodging question after question, refusing to name names, and hiding behind layers of bureaucracy. This isn't oversight. It's theater. This isn't transparency. It's smoke and mirrors. Kennedy's performance struck a nerve because he wasn't playing nice. He was saying out loud what people at home yell at their television screens. Why do we never get names? Why does no one ever pay the price? Why is the truth always delayed, hidden, or spun? His sarcasm landed like a gut punch. Will we get the truth before I die? That wasn't a joke. It was a reminder that time is running out, for him, for the survivors of Epstein's crimes, and for the American people waiting for justice that never comes. The larger question now isn't just about Epstein. It's about whether democracy can survive if the people no longer believe their institutions. If justice only applies to some, then it isn't justice at all. If narratives can be shaped in secret to protect one candidate or crush another, then elections are not truly free. If whistleblowers are punished while insiders are rewarded, then accountability doesn't exist. And if the FBI, the DOJ, and the intelligence community can dodge and deflect every time they're asked for names, then what's left but public anger and distrust? Kennedy knows the stakes. And that's why his hearing resonated. He wasn't offering a partisan fight. He was demanding the bare minimum: truth. Names. Accountability. For Epstein, for Page and Strzok, for the laptop, for every cover-up that has chipped away at faith in the system. Because if those things can't be delivered, then what are these hearings really for? Just theater. Just words. Just a show to make it look like something is being done. And maybe that's the most dangerous part of all. Because the longer the truth is delayed, the more people believe it will never come. And when the public loses trust completely, when they stop believing in equal justice, what happens to the country itself? That's why Kennedy's questions hit harder than usual. He didn't just ask whether Epstein was killed. He asked whether the system that claims to serve us is already too compromised to save itself. He asked whether America is now a place where the elite never face justice, where files stay sealed forever, and where the truth dies before the people ever hear it. The chilling reality is this. When a senator has to beg to know whether the truth will be released before he dies, that tells you everything you need to know about the state of transparency in America. And so we return to the one question that still echoes across the country. Did Jeffrey Epstein really hang himself, or was he silenced? That question may never get a straight answer. But what Kennedy exposed in that hearing is just as important. If the people at the top can manipulate narratives, dodge accountability, and bury scandals, then the real question isn't who killed Epstein. The real question is whether we can still trust the people who claim to serve us if you believe the American people deserve the full truth. Not filtered spin, not sealed files, not carefully crafted letters, but the real story. Then hit that like button, subscribe for more raw and unfiltered coverage, and let us know in the comments. Do you think Epstein's death was really a suicide, or are we still being lied to?